I find that I am the most joyful when I'm in alignment, and I'm in the most alignment when I'm in the word. And I'm in the word when I'm not leaning on my own understanding, but I'm seeking his will and his wisdom for my life. As a woman of faith, this is really important for me. Psalm 37:4 says, "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Right? Take delight in it. He has gone up before us and he is planning that. But when we try to again say, okay, I got this, or I got this handled, that's when things get a little funky. And I also believe, when life gets easy or a little bit lighter, we forget about God. Like, God, man, I'm cruising, I'm strolling. But then when we're like suffering, we're on our knees, right? This month, we were talking a lot about joy and wonder. And today's episode is kind of going to just bring us full circle of what joy really means in this episode. I really want to talk about finding and sharing joy. And as we have moved through the last couple of months, it's been a lot of self-reflection, a little bit, a lot of reflection on who are we, how are we looking inwardly. But today I want to focus on how we radiate it outwards, to use our joy to be light onto others. One of my favorite phrases that I use almost every day, both to my kids and to my staff and to just people who want to listen to me, is I say, radiate Christ's joy, radiate Christ's love. This is one of our guiding principles also at Amani Collective, because I just think it's so important when we show up every day. How are we showing up for the world? How are we being kind? I also tell every morning I go, the new Geo kids are, and my three littles look at me and they say, we're kind. And I want that to be just like this theme of not just my life, but hopefully that overflows into other people's lives. We have no idea where people are coming from, where they're going, what they just went through, just even the 5 minutes before they stepped in front of us. And so I think we have this opportunity to intersect in people's lives and to bring joy forward. Joy isn't meant to be hoarded, right? It's not meant to just keep to ourselves. It's meant to be experienced and expressed. And I think just in that alone, I want us to be able to explore that together a little bit. I also want to apologize. Well, two things. Okay. So first, I have been on the road for like 6 weeks and I'm back in the office. So I'm back in my office where I record and I'm so excited. But two, I have a lot of road noise. And so if that is cutting into the mic or you hear that just a little bit, this is Moxie Uncut. So if you're new here and you're used to kind of professional edits, or you're used to like professional sounds, you're not always going to get that on this podcast, because we like to be truly authentic. And so because I live in Mombasa, Kenya, and I live in Old Town, there's tons of tuk-tuks going on. There's a lot of hustle and bustle happening on the street today. But this is the time I chose to record. So you can also say I should try to plan my recordings a little bit better. But the reality is the street is always busy and we don't actually have our recording studio anymore. Fun fact, I developed a recording studio here and it like created intense black mold, like toxic, so bad. So we had to tear it down. Mombasa is extremely humid, and I had a feeling this might have like would have happened, but we rode that wave as long as we could, and then decided, you know what? There are better things to our health than sitting in a moldy, toxic recording studio. So we'll find other options in the future. But as of now, if you do hear that background noise, I do apologize. But I want to start a little bit with just kind of a story about how joy really affected me and in my life, and just how I feel as we move forward again, that as I mentioned, we can be this intersection for people, and we don't even know it, right? And so there in the beginning of motherhood, I didn't actually realize I was going through postpartum. And then I've told this story multiple times until really my third, and I experienced postpartum in different ways with my kids. Some with overworking or anxiety. Postpartum got worse. And then when my last, it was definitely a postpartum depression for a bit, and had to really work through that. And I would say that the people that came around me and really showed me just who I was and who I was in Christ really got me through those moments. But one of my stories that I write about in my book is my friend Jenna. And Jenna and I have gone through, I feel like, a lot as friends. And I wouldn't say we're best friends. Like, I'm not the person she calls and she's not the person I call. But we're friends. And if anything, if she called me today, I would drop everything and go there and be there. And you have those people in your life too. They might not know the ins and outs of what's going on in your day, but you are definitely probably going to show up for them when they give you a call. And so my daughter, this was my second born. My daughter was almost 7 months old. She was 6 months old, and I got hit with a wave of dengue. And dengue fever here on the coast in Kenya it's brutal. It's really intense, and it feels literally like death. And there's like nothing they can do about it. You need to actually go into the hospital to be monitored if it gets to a certain level. But you really have to write it out, and they like you take papaya extract pills and juice because that helps with your platelet levels. So what happens is it attacks your platelet levels, and your platelet levels go really, really low, like extremely low. My husband got dengue right before we met, actually, back in 2013, and almost died. And there is just there's a lot to it. So I knew the history of it. I knew people that had gotten it. I actually knew people who had died from it because they had a certain strand that made them hemorrhage. And so I was in the hospital with a 6 month old. Now keep in mind, she couldn't be in the hospital with me, and I'm breastfeeding. And so as I'm going through these waves of pain, because they call it broken bone disease, because it just like cripples your whole body. And if you've been pregnant and given birth, some of you I know that have been pregnant and given birth have never gone through contractions because of your story. But if you've experienced contractions, it has a similar feeling to that, where all of a sudden there will be this wave of pain that you have to work through. And they're longer than contractions. You have to work through for many, many minutes, and then it'll subside, and you'll be okay maybe for like 30 minutes. And then a wave of pain will come through, and it literally will feel like a stab across all your bones in your body. And that's why they call it breaking bone disease. And I mean, I just experienced sitting in the fetal position and rocking back and forth by myself in a hospital room during this time, because my husband had to be with my 2-year-old son and our 6-month-old daughter and hold down the house while I'm having to work through this pain in the hospital. And my friend Jenna came and visited, and keep in mind, during all of this, I'm pumping and people are picking up milk from me to give to my daughter, and I'm barely able to produce the milk that she needs because I am so sick. And after dengue, I had to wean her off, or really I had to supplement. And it was a sad journey for me because my son and I had breastfed for a year, and yeah, it came short, and it wasn't a decision, of mine. It was more so like my body was wrecked, and I was just trying to survive, and my body couldn't output what she needed. And so there was a lot going on. But I even couldn't it's really hard to shower, and it was really hard to brush my hair because I really couldn't even put my hands above my head. And so I remember just this selfless act really of Jenna brushing my hair, and brushing my hair even hurt because, again, every follicle I felt like on my body hurt, and she was gentle and she brushed my hair. And so for me, that is a very vulnerable position to be in. I don't want to be helped. I don't ask for help often, especially in this time of my life. And I'm very independent. And so to have to rely on someone to actually brush my hair, a simple act like that was it was just a transformative moment for me as an individual, because I learned a lot of just how to accept that. And she also just brought me so much joy. I was in a lot of pain. And again, these can coexist together. You can be in a lot of pain, you can be grieving, you can still have joy. And she brought me a lot of joy into that room. And I will always remember that moment. And so I'm not sure what chapter it is in Let It Be Wild, but if you want to read a little bit of my story, you can go check that out, Let It Be Wild. I'm now been selling my books on Books By, and so we'll put that in the show notes. And I recently just put out a 35-day devotional to go with it called Stepping Into Your Wild. And so there's a whole other part of that in that devotional, but I love that chapter because really joy is not something that is to be hoarded, something to give. And she gave it so selflessly that day. And it just It's just something I'll always remember. So I hope that you can think of something in your life where you're like, man, that person really showed up for me and like changed my day and brought joy into my life, because joy is something that we're invited into, guys. It's not something we're called to carry. It's something that we're invited into. We're supposed to live together in it. And that moment in time was something that I got to really experience. And joy is also worth prioritizing in our life. Joy often, I feel like, gets pushed aside in the name of just productivity, pressure, responsibility, things that we're going through. But if we're not intentional, we forget that joy is essential. It's essential to our spiritual, emotional, and creative well-being. And when we just kind of, especially as entrepreneurs, I know that we can feel this if we just keep like pushing through, where it's just all about productivity and efficiency, and we don't find joy in what we're doing. We're going to get burned out, and we're going to lose the actual passion that we had to do the work that we did, and to do the work that we started, because we've taken joy out of the equation. So finding your joy isn't optional. It's not an optional thing that we can just pick from the shelf here or there. It's sacred work that we need to be doing daily, in and out. It's a way that we can show up. It's a way that we can give to others, and it's a way that really fuels our soul. And especially as entrepreneurs, especially as mothers, as parents, man, joy fuels resilience. It's not a luxury. It is a strength to be had when we can walk in a room and be joyful, right? When we can walk in a room and we can fill up a space and impact others with our energy. You can impact others for good or for bad. I know that you've been in spaces where you walk in and without one person being said, like without one word being said, or without even eye contact being had, you can walk in a room and feel tension of someone's energy. Energy is really, really powerful. This is something that I teach in Clarity. If you have not heard about me talk about Shift is a tool that I use. It's a tool that I am trained on with Clarity faculty. And it's something actually readily available to you. I have a 3 series on my website, and we'll link that as well. Man, I feel like this episode, I'm like putting all these little nuggets for you guys, but I love this training that I do. I do it at least once a year, virtually and in person. But it is, again, like I said, those recordings are on my website. But to shift your clarity, I mean, to shift your mindset, your energy is really important. So in Clarity, we talk about shifting to above the line. There's below the line feelings like anger, doubt, frustration, and then there's above the line feelings that we can shift towards. And when we do that, and when we do that effectively, and we practice doing that, man, it is powerful. Like, how can you get from frustration to excitement within 2 minutes? How can you do that? One, it's you being self-aware and mindful of just like your feelings alone, but also understanding the presence that you bring to others. I, as a leader, I've done my best in this, and I've not done my best in this, right? I have so many mistakes and so many failures that I've done. I'll give you a perfect example of what just happened last week. And if anybody on my any of my management or leadership's listening to this, like, if I haven't apologized already, like, you will get a formal apology. But I'm human, and things happen, and I can get frustrated. And sometimes if I don't take a breather and I don't collect my thoughts, I'm going to come out very direct, intense, and misunderstood in communication. And so we had a new client coming through our doors last week, and this client was important. It wasn't just about this initial order. It was actually about, okay, what can this order do for us in the future, right? Because I knew this client's connected to a lot of other people that if we can get this one order right, it's going to open doors to a lot of other orders. So to me, this was urgent. It was urgent. It's something urgent and important. If you guys know Eisenhower Matrix, this is what like I live and breathe with our management team. It's urgent, important. We need to move forward with this. And what happened is it wasn't perceived as urgent. I also didn't communicate kind of the ripple of impact that this person and this individual could have for us. And so we kind of dragged our feet on information. And I wouldn't say we dragged our feet, because they were gathering actually the information. They were just doing it in a important, not urgent manner, right? Which is still good. But something that I wanted like in 2 hours was taking like 2 days. And so my reaction to them was not good. It was frustrating, right? And it came off not in a way that, as a leader that I am now to this day, I would want to be perceived. And my journey has been, in any of our leadership journeys, we feel this. But when I look back in my early 20s, I was like, oh, Jenny, you pulled like an early 20 Jenny just like yesterday, And I don't like doing that. There's a lot of patience and a lot of resilience and a lot of temperament that I've learned. And I want to respect my leaders and knowing and understanding that they are fully capable. I don't need to be the bottleneck. I don't need to step in. And so because of that, I really affected kind of the energy of the space. And I took the joy away from something that should have been a celebration. And now it is a celebration. Like, we're moving forward and we've cleared the air, and we're still clearing the air in communication. But again, joy, when we take away the joy, it creates a bit more of these, what would I say, these like gaps in communication. When we take away the joy, it creates craters of just hurt but when we put the joy in there, it gets us through, right? It creates this resilience and tenacity. And it's this strength that we can say that we have in our journey in our life. And joy is ultimately found in alignment and not achievement. So the story of last week, which is really interesting, is I find that I am the most joyful when I'm in alignment, and I'm in the most alignment when I'm in the word. And I'm in the word when I'm not leaning on my own understanding, but I'm seeking his will and his wisdom for my life. As a woman of faith, this is really important for me. Psalm 37:4 says, take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Right? Take delight in it. He has gone up before us and he is planning that. But when we try to, again, say, okay, I got this, or I got this handled, that's when things get a little funky. And I also believe, when life gets easy or a little bit lighter, we forget about God. We're like, God, man, I'm cruising, I'm strolling. But then when we're like suffering, we're on our knees, right? And of course, I think getting on our knees and in the suffering is exactly where God wants us. But he also wants us in the high mountaintop moments. And oftentimes that is forgotten. And so we need to stay in alignment to that, right? So joy is found in alignment, not achievement. We often think joy will come after we reach a goal or we solve a problem, right? And as I mentioned last week in last week's episode, happiness and joy are different. So joy should be consistent in our life. And again, it's something that it's a strength of ours. It's not a luxury. It's something that we need to keep having and holding on to and sharing to others. And we need to understand that true lasting joy, when we're aligned with who we are, who God has made us to be, what we value, and how we're created to live, that is when true long lasting joy happens. When we're aligned with who we are and what we value and how we're created to live. I don't think I've taken a breath this whole episode, so I want to pause there. And I want you to think about that alignment. When you are aligned, you're creating space for joy to naturally rise without striving. This has been my theme for this year. Stop striving, surrender it to him, and just walk in alignment with who you're made to be. That is the essence of what your wild is. When I'm like, man, what is your wild? It is the essence of alignment to who you are. Who you are. So walk in that. Walk in that, and you will see the shifts in your life. Because when you're living in alignment, even in, again, the mundane, we talked about basking in the mundane last week. It seems simple. It almost seems simple, but things are going to begin to become more easeful because you are walking in who you were always truly made to be. And that is where joy will naturally stem from, because you're not striving for it. It is naturally coming out of you. And so we need to also redefine this idea of what success looks like in our life. That's been a journey that I've been on in the last 5 years, because the true nature of joy is when you live in alignment with God's presence, when you live in alignment with God's will for you, when you live in alignment to, again, who he beautifully made you to be. Joy follows. It will always follow. It will always follow. I'm going to link, because I love my husband so much. He's my favorite person on earth. I'm going to link his sermon to the show notes. And if you've never even been to the show notes or you don't know where to go, like go to your, I don't know, podcast app, whatever you're looking at, click the probably the three dots or the learn more and go find the link. My husband did an amazing sermon. It was actually one of my favorites. He's an elder at our church, and he did a sermon about contentment and how comparison is the thief of it. Like we will never be content if we're comparing ourselves to others. And this was on Mother's Day, so it was even like more aligned with like also like bringing in just like motherhood and what we see on the Instagram grid and like all the things. And I loved it so much. Like I loved it so much. I just sat there and I was just like, oh, gosh, I'm married to that man. First of all, that's always distracting when your husband's up there. Because I'm like, oh, look at him. I'm married to that man. But second, I was just like, man, I'm married to this man who is just speaking truth and is touching so many people because he's allowing God to speak through him. Sorry, I get emotional. My husband has made me more in tune with my emotions too. Man, I used to never cry so much. But when you see God work through someone and you see the joy that radiates through them, it is so authentic because they are in alignment with who they are. And we are supposed to share that joy. Sharing your joy is a form of impact because joy is contagious, guys. It's contagious. And when you live from a place of joy, you give others permission to do the same. And they'll just want that around you because that's what you bring to the table. That's what you bring into the room. And whether it's through your voice or it's through your creativity or it's through your leadership or it's simply just through your presence, your joy lights the path for others. And we can't dismiss that because sharing your joy doesn't require a platform, guys. It requires authenticity. You don't have to be an influencer. You don't have to be on even the waves of social media. And you just have to show up and be present right where your feet are. We've been talking about the month before, right? We talked about rest and presence. This month, we're talking about joy and wonder. You cannot give out joy if you're not being fully present. I mean, you can, but it also requires intentionality, right? And so, real and true joy, I believe, comes from an authentic nature. And in order to be authentic, you need to be intentional. In order to be intentional, you're probably present. In order to be present, you need to have rest. And all of this is a ripple. There is a reason why I do what I do and I talk about what I talk about and I plan out the podcast the way I do because they build on one another. And it's important for you to know you can have that impact. And it starts with your home. Maybe it starts with your daughter or your son or your husband or your best friend or your mom. It starts internal. And then just through the way that you show up in spaces, whether that's walking, whether it's a simple smile, whether it's giving someone a compliment, that joy will penetrate a space beyond measure. And your impact, your ripple will be immense. And you won't even know it until you get to the gates where God says, man, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done. Matthew 5:14-16 says, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Your joy is light. You need to share it boldly and you need to share it generously because that is what the world needs more of. We are sinners and we are in a world that is broken. We are humans that are not perfect. And when we decide to collide against each other instead of cohesively live with one another, that is when hurt and brokenness continues. And that is not what we're called to be or do. And God has created you so beautifully in his image. And I remind you of that. I want to remind you that your joy is worth prioritizing. Your joy is found in alignment with him and not in achievement. And sharing your joy is a form of impact. It's a form of impact. And man, I can't wait for you to continue to be that bright light. So I will leave you with our guiding principle at Amani Collective, where we say radiate Christ's joy every day. And I'll leave you also with what I tell my kids in the morning: go out and be kind. Be kind. And my question to you this week is, how can you make space for that joy and then find a way to share it. And what truly brings you joy? Not surface level joy, but soul deep joy. What brings it to you? And I hope you explore that. And I hope you rest in it a little, maybe reflect, find some time to reflect. Man, I am in a space where I've been on the road, like I said, for 6 weeks, and I need to make some time to reflect. Because when we can reflect and we can see how far we've come from and we can see where we're going, that alone too is pretty amazing. So keep pushing forward, friend. I threw a lot of really great resources your way this episode. And so really go check out the show notes. We'll make sure all those links are there and that you have that at your fingertips. And I also want you to know that the social space can be weird. Remember that. You don't necessarily know what's happening behind the doors, even though you might think you know that individual because you see it on their grid or you see it on their stories. But we don't actually really know. We don't know that much. And so be kind. Be kind to others and what's going on. Have discernment. Be prayerful. But ultimately, bring your joy every day. Bring your joy every day. And don't hoard it, but share it. As always, friends, if this resonated with you, if you feel that it will resonate with someone else, please share it. I always want this intimate community to grow in different ways. And truly, starting the podcast 7 years ago was never a space that I actually wanted to be my full time. Podcasting isn't my full time, but podcasting in this forum is a place to encourage and inspire, and for me to spread joy to you. And so if this really was something that resonated with you or you want somebody to hear, please share it with them. And if you are listening to this and a friend shared it with you and you're getting to this, pay it forward to another friend. And I'm so glad that you joined today, that you listened. I hope you're inspired, encouraged, and I really challenge you to go out and continue to be that bright light. As always, let your wild shine, and I'll see you next week. Moxie on, friends.